Former Cabinet Minister, now Conservative leadership hopeful Robert Jenrick says the Prime Minister lied through his teeth on possible tax hikes during the general election. He joins us now. So let's start with the budget. Big day, first ever woman, female delivering a budget as Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, but also for Rishi Sunak, he's doing as leader of the opposition, the opposition response in Parliament. I guess it will be the last time that he will do a big set-piece moment as a Conservative leader in Parliament. You were very close to him over many years. When you look back on his time as the Conservative leader, what conclusions do you draw? What lessons do you learn from his experience about how you would be leader and then potentially Prime Minister of our country?
Well, look, I think that Rishi has been a very decent, incredibly hard-working public servant. With Jeremy Hunt, he did a lot to stabilise the public finances after the mini-budget a few years back and to begin to restore the public's trust in us as a party for sound management of the public finances. What we're going to see today, I suspect, are massive tax hikes on the British public, a massive erosion in the public's trust in this new Labour government. It looks like the Labour Party's manifesto was a dodgy dossier. It was lie after lie after lie. They said they weren't going to raise tax on working people. Looks like they're going to do precisely that. They said they want to change the fiscal rules. Rachel Reeves has said she's going to do that. They can't say what a working person is, and they're increasing taxes and the cost of living. You know, everything from bus fares that my constituents up in Nottinghamshire rely on to get about, to get to work, to employers' national insurance, which, as you know, Ed, is a tax on jobs. This is going to hurt the economy. It's going to put off or suppress wage increases. This is going to be very harmful. It's going to trap the economy in a cycle of ever-rising taxes just at a time when we should have a proper plan to grow the economy.
But to go back to my question and taking all those points, you aren't continuity Rishi Sunak. You're offering change. Of course, you left his government. What are the things that you will do differently? What lessons have you learned from how he led the Conservative Party, which would be different under a Jenrick Conservative Party in the next few years?
Well, I've tried to be painfully honest about the things we didn't get right, what we didn't do enough on. I think we ended up with a big state that doesn't work as well as it should do. You see that with the NHS. I think we need to be obsessed with how we reform the NHS, ensure that it's actually providing better quality public services than it has today. I think taxes were too high. It looks like Labour is going to raise them even more. I think that's very harmful, just at a time when we've had a decade or more since the financial crash of low economic growth. We've got to be making this country more competitive. And on our borders, we should be trying to control and reduce immigration. We should be trying to stop the small boats. And whilst a lot of efforts were put in, it wasn't enough. We ultimately weren't willing to do whatever it takes.
Can I just say on that,
I've set very clear policies how I would do that.
You've said that when you mentioned the boats, and of course the flagship Rwanda policy was one of those things that concerned you, and you felt it didn't go far enough and resigned over that. You've now said that everyone in the Cabinet knew it wouldn't work. Was this before or after you'd spent £370 million on it, according to the National Audit Office?
Well, we discussed it within Cabinet, and I was very clear that we would have to significantly strengthen the Rwanda policy for it to have the desired effect.
But
you've got to have that deterrent.
Because £370 million is a lot of money. So at what point did everyone agree it wasn't going to work? Was it after it was spent, or 10 million in, or 20 million in? You know, where did you draw the line, everybody in the Cabinet? Because it would have been nice to have saved that cash if you all thought it wasn't going to work.
Well, I think the idea of the Rwanda scheme 100% could work. You've got to have a deterrent in order to break the business model of the people smuggling gangs.
Yeah, that's what you said at the time, but you're now saying that people in the Cabinet didn't think it would work.
Well, the problem was it had to be strengthened, because in order to break the business model, you had to stop the myriad of legal claims, which means that you can't deport people within days or weeks. It takes months or years. And the only way to do that was to deal with the European Convention on Human Rights. That was the argument that I made at the turn of last year.
It was a British court, wasn't it, that decided it was illegal?
Well, it was the Supreme Court applying the European Convention on Human Rights.
OK.
And I think by the end of last year...
in terms of the spending, you were talking about trust in budgets and all of that. You know, when did that become clear to everyone in the Cabinet? Was it before it was spent or after? Because we could have had that money for the NHS.
Well, I think by the time that the Supreme Court had ruled, which was in November of last year...
But which time you had by that time resigned?
No, that was just prior to my resignation.
Just before you resigned.
At that point, it became apparent to me, and I would argue most people within government, that the scheme was not going to work unless we dealt with the European Convention on Human Rights. That was the argument I made. I said, we have to get the scheme up off the ground. Obviously, the public were immensely angry and frustrated that we hadn't stopped the boat. The only way to do that was to remove the European Convention on Human Rights.
But the money had been spent by then?
Well, much of it had.
Right.
But the argument I now make today is that by leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, we can finally resolve this issue, stop the boats, and ensure that we secure our borders once and for all.
It's a big dilemma in politics, isn't it, when you disagree with the direction, and you clearly were disagreeing, and in a way, as you said, you're more honest than other colleagues about your view of the Rwanda policy. Famously, Michael Heseltine resigned from Margaret Thatcher's cabinet and then didn't become the leader. Often the guy who resigns, as a matter of principle, finds it hard to then go on and win the subsequent leadership election. Have there been moments where you've wondered whether you should have just stuck it out?
Well, I didn't view this as a stepping stone to standing to be leader of the party. To me, it was an important matter of principle. I was faced with a choice. Do you pilot a bill through Parliament, which I knew was not going to work, and look you in the eye, look the public in the eye, and say that black was white, or go into Parliament on the backbenches and try to make an argument that we had to strengthen the bill and deal with the European Convention on Human Rights? I think I made the right choice. And now we've all seen what's happened. I was proven right. The flights did not go off to Rwanda. We continue to have thousands of people crossing every week, 15,000 since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. That's going to continue for years to come unless we tackle this issue. That's why I feel so strongly about it.
Have you been surprised by Kemi Badenoch? I mean, she's been quite rude, hasn't she? You know, she says, you know, integrity matters with me, she said in the Sunday Telegraph. I was never sacked for anything. I didn't have to resign in disgrace. I mean, it kind of lowered the tone a bit.
Well, overall, I think this leadership contest has been conducted in a respectful and collegiate way. It is a shame that it's been slightly sullied at the last minute. What I think is that the public are sick of all this drama. They want to end it, don't they? They think the Conservative Party has been characterised by pettiness and squabbling and infighting. I want to unite the Conservative Party. So that is not my way. My way is to end all of the excuses and actually get on and deliver.
So if she won, would you take a job in her shadow cabinet?
Would I serve in her shadow cabinet? I'd be happy to. I care about this party. I want to play a part in its revival. I'd like her to serve in my shadow cabinet and must work as a team.
Cool.
You and a number of other Conservatives have... well, you yourself released a video, didn't you, commenting on the current case into the killing of those little girls in Southport. You've suggested, and other charges as well surrounding that accused, you have suggested that there may be some kind of impropriety conducted in terms of release of information surrounding that. Others have gone further and said it's a conspiracy. Why is it conspiracy, in your view, and not just applying the rules of contempt of court in order to get a fair trial for those poor little victims' families and justice to be served? And why is it appropriate to do that just in the middle of this moment? How is that serving justice? Is it serving more your causes?
Well, I think the legal process has to be respected. Of course it does, and you rightly have said so on the programme this morning. But we were told for months that this was not a terror-related incident.
It wasn't.
And yet we learnt yesterday...
No, they haven't. The police and the
they haven't said it was a terror-related incident.
We learnt yesterday that the suspect is alleged to have had access to al-Qaeda manuals and to very dangerous substances like ricin.
But they haven't linked the two, and surely that is part of due process during a court case, not to be discussed before.
Well, I think the fact that the suspect has been found with Al-Qaeda manuals.
But this is speculation.
And rice in...
I mean, don't you know, as a former minister in the government...
Well, that's not speculation.
You are speculating about a link between one charge and another charge at the very moment when the individual is about to appear in court. Isn't that exactly what leads us into contempt of court?
No,
because that kind of speculation is the kind of thing, that kind of linkage, which the police say there isn't the evidence for at the moment, is the kind of thing which then causes cases to collapse.
Well,
Isn't that a risk you're prepared to run?
I'm actually angry, Ed, that this is an atrocity of massive public interest.
Of course.
And yet facts have not been released into the public domain.
Because it's part of building a case that goes to court. And the linkage of that could jeopardise a fair trial.
The Prime Minister held a press conference in Downing Street directly addressing this atrocity.
Yes.
Merseyside Police said that they would keep the public informed about this. Why have they waited? Why has the Prime Minister waited months to be honest with the public about what may have happened here?
Well, because
a terrorist incident...
It's not the Prime Minister, it's the police.
Terrorism isn't any normal crime.
This is a
crime on all of us. It's an attack on our society. People deserve to be told the facts here. And if they're not...
But is that more important than the legal process?
I think the legal process is absolutely paramount.
Paramount.
But so is it important to keep the public informed.
But the police are clearly judging that they have to handle this in a way which does not...
The police give information to keep the public updated. In this particular case, the police have chosen not to do so.
Well,
and the Prime Minister
would argue that that's because they...
what he knew and when.
Well, they would argue that that's because they have to be in a position to judge a case in order to prevent speculation occurring that might then lead to accusations of not a fair trial, which could jeopardise it. And if the Prime Minister were to intervene, isn't that...
Well, the Prime Minister held a press conference in Downing Street in which he addressed this case. The Home Secretary in the House of Commons said that we should not speculate, we shouldn't deal in misinformation. Months have since passed, and now we learn that this...
On the case it comes to trial.
That the suspect
from the police
was alleged to have Al-Qaeda manuals and writing at his disposal.
Are you saying that if you were the Prime Minister, you would, contrary to police advice...
Well, we don't know that, do we, Ed?
No,
we don't know what the advice of the police was.
I'm
asking the question,
if you judge the public needed to know, you would tell the public things, even if the police and the Crown Prosecution Service said that would risk contempt of court and fair trial.
I'm asking the question, Ed, what did the Prime Minister know and when?
Well, how does he say that?
Why did he choose not to say it? What's at stake here? The risk
what's at stake here is a fair trial and justice for the victim.
The risk here is a massive loss in public trust in the police and our criminal justice system, because many people across our country are watching this programme this morning and are thinking that they have been deliberately concealed.
Well, you are telling them that. You're telling them that.
And what I don't want our country to become is one like some others around the world, like Germany, for example, where the authorities and the press deliberately conceal information on serious crimes,
but you're the one
terrorism,
suggesting that that's
on crimes
happening,
committed
whereas
by
they're saying
illegal
it's
migrants,
a legal process.
out of fear of community tensions.
But you said the legal process is paramount.
The state should be lying to its own citizens.
So if you're a Prime Minister, the legal process is paramount. If the police and the Crown Prosecution Service say, we will not make this public at this stage because it would risk contempt of court, would you say to the legal officers, no, the need to inform the public, in my judgment, is more important, and therefore you would take the decision-making on the release of information from the police and the Crown Prosecution Service and take that into your own hands in a press conference? Is that what you're saying?
No, but I want to know...
It sounds like...
I want to know when the Prime Minister knew. We don't know that information. We don't know what the advice of the police was in this case, and we don't know why the police has chosen not to say this. The effect of this has been that there has been speculation over the summer. There has been a loss of trust in the police and the criminal justice process, and I think that's wrong. The state shouldn't be lying to its own citizens.
Of course
we should be being clear about what has actually happened in serious
crimes. Are you saying that the state has lied to its own citizens?
Well, we don't know. We don't know the reason, Ed, we don't know the reason why this information has been concealed. Why has it taken months for the police to set out basic facts about this case that it is reasonable to believe were known within hours or days of this incident occurring?
Well,
Good to speak to you this morning. I think you've got a busy couple of days, haven't you? And then we'll all know the result. Good to speak to you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with it all.
Thank you.